There's more mischief, mayhem, and nefarious goings-on in the city of brotherly love than Billy Penn could have ever imagined. We've got it all here on the Twisted Philly podcast. True crime, haunted history, the coolest and creepiest places to visit. Welcome to Twisted Philly.
Hey Twisters, what up? Welcome back to Twisted Philly, and as you all know by now, I'm Dina Marie, your host on this twisted journey. Thanks so much for listening to The Last Unicorn. I really appreciate the feedback many of you shared with me on social media. I'm glad you enjoyed the episode. It was obvious how much I detest and abhor Ira Einhorn. You could hear the venom in my voice, and I'm sort of okay with that. This is not the Middle of the Fence podcast. Twisted Philly isn't only the stories I want to tell, but how I want to tell them. I'll never be the host who maintains a detached level of storytelling. That's simply not me. For those of you who are still listening 6 months later, I guess that's okay with all of you too, and I'm really happy about that. When did it become April already? Like, where the fuck did the first 3 months of the year go? I almost said Q1 because at work we're always talking about the year in quarters, but here's the great thing about work this week. I'm not there. I took a little time off to focus on me, recharge the batteries, and focus on Twisted Philly. I'll be spending some time with other podcasters this week, so keep an eye on my social media pages to find out with whom I'll be recording and when you can check out those episodes. By now, you should all know where to find me, but we've had so many new listeners in the past few weeks, I figured I'd share my social media handles. I'm on Twitter at Twisted_Philly and on Facebook at Twisted Philly Podcast, which is where I promote the show and stories from the area, or the Twisted Philly Podcast discussion group where we all just basically talk shit together. All right, a little housekeeping out of the way. Let's get to the what-ups. Thank you to our 5-star reviewers on iTunes. The first one is Monet W. Girl, your review was the bomb. You put emojis in, and that made me so happy. It's the first time anybody's ever done that. What up to TX Maggie, Pyromaniac, Storm Lightning Bane, and I have to take a minute and say thank you to Storm, who has become such a constant source of support, smiles, laughs, and jabs on social media. She binged Twisted Philly, which still blows my mind because it's hard to imagine someone binging my show. I get so excited when I find a new show that I love and want to binge it, so thanks, girl. MJJ Sconey, Jim Newland, and Philly Girl in the South. Girl, you got to come home for a visit and grab some soft pretzels. Thank you all so much for taking the time to subscribe and leave a review if you're on the iTunes platform. It really does make a difference. It helps the show climb the charts in my category, which helps other Twisted listeners find us. Oh, one other piece of housekeeping. So I've had a number of listeners recently ask where they can get Twisted Philly t-shirts. I've got a merchandise shop online. You can get there by going to twistedphillypodcast.threadless.com. You can find the link on my Twitter and Facebook pages too. There's tees for men, for women, for kids even. I've got onesies that one listener told me she was ordering for her dog. So now I want to get onesies for my dogs. There's mugs and notebooks. There's even iPhone cases. The show logo is available and a creepier design that reads, "It's never just a mannequin," because for some reason cops always think abandoned bodies are mannequins. Like, who the hell would toss a mannequin in an open field or in a basement? Like, people just have mannequins hanging around and say, gee, I think I'll go leave this in an open field or in a basement or on the side of the road, and maybe I'll put some fake blood on it while I'm at it. There's also a design for the episodes about Grace Packer, and all proceeds from that t-shirt go to the charity On Gracie's Wings. So if you're in the market for a new t-shirt or a coffee mug, maybe get one that shows your love for Twisted Philly. That's pretty much what I'll be wearing the entire time at CrimeCon. Well, not mugs, but Twisted Philly tees and jeans. Speaking of CrimeCon, if you're heading out to Indy for the convention, hit me up on social media or drop me an email at twistedphilly@outlook.com. I'd love to connect with you, meet you in person, maybe host a meetup, have a few cocktails. Tickets are still available. Yeah, I know, ticket prices went up. I got lucky and bought my tickets back in September. But you still have a little luck left because I've got a discount code. You can use code TWISTED20 and you'll get 20% off your registration. You know, this time of year gets so busy for me, and it's really my own fault because there is so much happening in the city that I love to do, especially in early spring, which seems to be the only time we actually have spring out here on the East Coast. There are a few weeks where the temperatures hover in the 50s and 60s. It's still cold at night, and the air is damp almost every day. Besides fall, that's really my favorite time to go out in Philadelphia and visit some of my favorite outdoor spaces. It's been kind of a while since I talked about activities in Philly, so that's what I want to do today. I want to tell you about some of the best places to hang in the city this spring. And since I was very small, one of the spots that has always been incredibly special to me is the Philadelphia Zoo.
The votes are in, and it's official. 2 red panda cubs born at the Philadelphia Zoo have been officially named Benjamin and Betsy. 17,000 people sent in suggestions for the names that were chosen. The names pay homage to 2 prominent Philadelphia figures, as you know, Betsy Ross and Benjamin Franklin.
The Philadelphia Zoo's newest arrival made her public debut today. That's Kayla, the sloth bear. She's 2 years old, and at 2 years old, she weighs 200 pounds. Here's the Philadelphia Zoo's newest addition, finally has a name. Baby Amani was born last month. Amani means peace in Swahili. The name was chosen as part of an online vote where people were also asked to donate money. Voters donated $6,600, which was then matched by the zoo. A total of $13,200 was raised for the gorilla rehabilitation and conservation education.
There are pictures of me with a second or third cousin when I was about 2, sitting on a sculpture of a turtle, or at least I think it's a turtle. It looks like a turtle in the picture. We're wearing matching clothes, and you can tell we're just having the best day ever. Some of my earliest childhood memories are from the Philadelphia Zoo, and it's one of those places that no matter how old I get, I still feel like a little girl every time I visit. And it's haunted. That's right, Twisters. America's first zoo, America's oldest zoo, is haunted. Ghosts and legends abound with the lions and tigers and bears, oh my. And those ghost stories begin with a house that's part of the zoo grounds, but it wasn't always that way. I'm talking about Solitude House. It's a simple box manor house that's over 200 years old, and it was built by William Penn's grandson, John Penn, back in 1784. John Penn was actually the governor of Pennsylvania twice until the Revolutionary War in 1776. After the war ended, Penn only lived at Solitude House for about 4 years before he returned to England, and he wanted something quiet, a place where he could pass peaceful days reading and writing poetry along the banks of the Schuylkill River, and that sounds fantastic. There was no zoo when Penn lived in Solitude House in West Philadelphia. There was no West Philadelphia back then. It was a section of the city called Centennial. After Penn left and returned to England, Solitude House passed from one generation of distant relations to the next, until finally passing out of the Penn family for good in the 1860s. And the zoo, well, it sort of built up around Solitude House. The Philadelphia Zoo was originally scheduled to open in 1859, but then the Civil War broke out, and its opening was delayed 15 years until 1874. When it opened, it was magnificent. It was the only zoo in America. It was the first zoo in America, and it was a full-blown zoo from day one. We're not talking about a bunch of Victorians walking around with a peacock on a leash. There were close to 1,000 animals of all varieties on display from the first day the zoo opened. The carriage houses that stood at the front of the zoo in 1874 still stand there today like gabled sentries, but now they serve as ticket houses, and when you look at them with the double barn doors, you can just imagine a horse-drawn carriage arriving almost 150 years ago, filled with families and children, paying 25 cents admission to see buffalo and bear and foxes and deer, and of course, the monkeys. Haven't you always wanted a monkey? Now, Solitude House was the reptile house when the zoo opened. I wonder what Penn would have thought of that, a bunch of snakes slithering around his old country manor house. And Solitude House is one of the sites where many of the tales of ghosts spring forth from the zoo. In fact, it probably has the most documented hauntings. In 2010, the TAPS team from Ghost Hunters came to Philadelphia at the invitation of a member of the zoo board. For years, zoo employees reported unexplained incidents at a number of locations around the zoo, especially in 3 locations in particular. One, of course, as I just mentioned, was Solitude House. The second was the Treehouse Building, which is an old Victorian building left over from the earliest days of the Philadelphia Zoo, and it was remodeled inside to create an immersive teaching and learning environment for visitors, especially children. It's an incredible experiential space where people can learn about science and nature and conservation, and it's also a really cool place to throw a party. The third spot with reports of paranormal activity is called the Penrose Building. Now, hauntings at the Philadelphia Zoo range from the simple and the mundane, like doors opening and closing on their own, to something much more outlandish, like full-blown, full-bodied apparitions. Not a full torso apparition in Ghostbusters, but sightings of a full woman in a white Victorian dress lingering by the stairs on the 2nd floor of Solitude House. Could this be a distant relative of John Penn from the late 1700s? Or someone who worked in the home before it became property of the zoo? Your guess is as good as anyone's. There's rumors of disembodied voices in the administration offices in the Shelley Building, and the sound of footsteps above you or behind you, but you're alone. Whether it's spirits from the Revolutionary War or the Civil War, or even spirits from a Native American burial ground, as the zoo was reportedly built on top of one thing is for sure: something goes boo at the zoo. A former Philadelphia Zoo board member had an experience with the supernatural one night while she and her daughter were walking through tunnels under the zoo. Yes, there is a circuitous, narrow city under the zoo filled with tunnels connecting animal sanctuaries, offices, storage rooms, and so many buildings. Certainly, it makes it easy for zoo staff to get around, but these aren't like the tunnels under Disney World, where characters simply appear to surprise unsuspecting princesses and pirates. These tunnels are old, and they're scary, and they are filled with sounds that go bump in the night. If you've seen M. Night Shyamalan's most recent film, Split, you know that a large part of that movie was filmed at the Philadelphia Zoo. Looking at the rooms in that movie and the tunnels, you can tell how old and creepy and frightening those spaces are. They absolutely look like the kind of space that would be filled with spirits. Now, that night that the board member and her daughter were walking under the tunnels, it was late, and they were using flashlights, and the beam of one of their flashlights picked up an unexpected misty form ahead of them in the tunnel. It had no discernible shape, but there was something spectral about it. In the Penrose Building, a zoo staff member reported working late one night in the library and seeing the figure of a woman with blonde hair. This employee was alone. No one else was in the building, and the woman she saw appeared to have a white light floating around her as she backed away from the employee. The employee ran out of the Penrose Building, and there was no sign of the ghost after that.
I looked up into the library, and there was a woman who had like a white light around her, and as soon as we locked eyes, she started to slowly back away from the window.
There are cold spots, there are footsteps, doors swinging open. Years of spectral activity led to an investigation by the crew from the Atlantic Paranormal Society, which you might know as TAPS, from the sci-fi show Ghost Hunters. In September 2010, Jason Hawes, Britt Griffith, and Grant Wilson were given access to the locations in the zoo where most of the paranormal activity happened. I've only been in the zoo at night a few times, and it was for business or charitable events. And when I say the zoo is a fantastic place to hold a party, I'm saying that from firsthand knowledge because the events there are terrific. Cocktails and marmosets, watching cats lounge in their sanctuaries. It's such an unusual juxtaposition between the animals inside the zoo, the cobblestones outside of the zoo, and flowing alcoholic beverages. It's been at least 15 years since I've been at the zoo at night, but I can tell you, although I never saw any paranormal activity personally, I definitely had moments where I felt the hair stand up on the back of my neck when I went to the ladies' room alone. Because contrary to popular belief, ladies do, on occasion, go to the restroom alone. On the evening of September 10th, the TAPS crew set up cameras in Solitude House. One of those cameras was placed in the tunnel under the building where the misty apparition was seen. TAPS weren't the only people there. A medium was part of the investigation, and she claimed to have seen the ghost of a woman hiding behind curtains in one of the offices. The ghost introduced herself as a woman named Amanda and said she'd worked at the zoo many years ago. The TAPS investigators captured thuds coming from the second floor. No one was on that level of the manor house, so what made the noises? It had to have been a ghost, but their equipment didn't capture any spectral presence.
Can you do something for us? Just to let us know you're here? Anything?
What's those thuds?
You're hearing them, though?
Mm-hmm. Are they coming from above us? I can't tell. It's either up or there.
Behind us, yeah.
Or couldn't quite tell where it's coming from.
That's you. Can you do it louder?
Jay's got to be upstairs.
I don't think it's coming from upstairs. I have no.
Want to bring this with me?
Yeah, do it up. I got my camera right there with the audio.
Eventually, I just headed up the stairwell to the top floor and was listening for that thump. Out of nowhere, just heard the sound of a really loud metal door opening and slamming shut.
Did you just open a door?
No, I was just going to see if that was you. I was upstairs.
I was sitting there the whole time.
Investigators were also staked out in the Penrose building, and they picked up noises coming from an office with a number of desks. Now, as they approached the desks, they said the air grew colder, noticeably colder than the rest of the room. And then the noises headed out of the room into the hallway.
It's a lot colder over here, KJ.
Is it?
Yeah, it is, actually.
Show us where you are.
What the hell was that?
I don't know.
As we moved over to that corner to try and figure out what the noises were, they stopped. And all of a sudden, they were happening out in the hallway. So we started to move towards the hallway.
Are you out here now?
We walk out, and as soon as I look to my right down the hall, I swear that I had seen something poking its head looking at us from one of the offices down the hallway.
By the time the investigators reached the hallway, one noticed the shape of a woman in Victorian clothing peering out from an open doorway down the hall, and then she quickly vanished. So we're 2 for 2. Unexplained noises and ghostly presences in both the Solitude House and Penrose building. The third building being investigated over 6 years ago was the Tree House, that old Victorian building converted into a science and nature center. It's hard to imagine ghosts lurking around giant honeycombs and dinosaur eggs large enough for children to climb on. But this night, like the other locations where TAPS was spread out throughout the zoo, the treehouse was alive with something other than the animals. The investigators in the treehouse tapped out a familiar song on the walls, and knocking responses were captured on their recording equipment.
Can you finish this? Can you finish this again?
It was in the treehouse that the medium had another experience, although it wasn't something she saw but a sensation, one of deep sadness from the spirit of an animal. Can animal spirits linger the way human spirits can? I guess so. I don't see why not. That is, if you believe in this sort of thing like I do. The Philadelphia Zoo experienced an unbelievable tragedy over 20 years ago in 1995. And for all of our unbelievable firsts at this zoo, being America's first zoo and the first successful birth of both a chimpanzee and an orangutan in U.S. zoos in 1928, the birth of the first cheetahs in any zoo almost 30 years later, and pioneering so many breeding programs, we had what might have been the first tragedy of this magnitude at any zoo, certainly in the U.S. On Christmas Eve in 1995, there was a fire at the primate house, what we called the world of primates. 23 animals were killed. There were gorillas and orangutans, lemurs and gibbons. They died of smoke inhalation long before the fire reached them, which was a small comfort, but it was devastating for our city. It was devastating for the zoological community. All of those animals were endangered. It was an unbelievably heartbreaking loss. And then we learned there were limited fire detectors in the zoo, and there wasn't one in the primate house. As you can imagine, that problem was quickly remedied, and within the next year, there were fire detectors, smoke detectors, alarms in every building and animal habitat in the zoo. 4 years later, the Philadelphia Zoo opened the Pico Primate Reserve, which is almost 3 acres of indoor and outdoor habitats for lowland gorillas, lemurs, so many beautiful primates. When I heard about the medium that participated in the paranormal investigation with TAPS, I wondered if the animal spirit she encountered was one of those beautiful primates that lost their life in that fire in 1995. And as far as I know, the TAPS investigation in 2010 was the last time a formal paranormal investigation was held at the zoo. I wonder if they'd let Twisted Philly hang out overnight in those tunnels. And by Twisted Philly, I mean me, and by tunnels, I mean I would be scared shitless, but I would still do it. Over the last 10 years, the Philadelphia Zoo continued modernizing, expanding, providing the most fulfilling and unbelievable habitats for the animals who live there. Every time I visit the zoo, I find something new I hadn't noticed the last time I was there. I am flooded with memories of childhood visits with Girl Scouts when I was a brownie, and then years later with my daughter when she was a Girl Scout. It's a remarkable part of our city, a remarkable part not only of our history here in Philadelphia, but of America. And then there's the Zoo Balloon. Our local ABC affiliate has an enormous hot air balloon with rides high above the zoo, and the views of the city are fantastic. I've been to the zoo in D.C. I've been to the zoo in San Diego. I actually spent 2 days there, and my daughter and I did so many of the behind-the-scenes experiences. As phenomenal as that was, nothing compares to the Philly Zoo, at least not for me. Maybe it's the ghosts, it's definitely the history, and for sure, it's the soft pretzels you can buy on the way in. Before I share a few more of my Philly favorites in spring, let's take a Podern family break and show some Twisted Philly love to a few more podcasts, and we'll be right back.
Hi, this is Christy Lee of the Canadian True Crime Podcast. Join me for a journey through many of the most heinous and shocking crimes in recent Canadian history, starting with Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka. You can find me on your favorite podcast app, Facebook or Twitter. Just search for Canadian True Crime. Thanks to Twisted Philly for having me on the show.
Do you like podcasts?
Do you like listening to podcasts?
Do you have ears?
Do you like Justin and Chrissy?
That's our names.
I know. We have a podcast. It's called So I Married a Movie Geek.
Check out this clip where we talk Star Wars sex.
I don't know how to explain this articulately, but what quote unquote gives me lady boners as far as this goes is not a person, and not like, especially not like a guy where, like Harrison Ford or Luke, or, even if I swung the other way and said, ooh, Leia.
Are you going to Ewoks? Two Ewoks like stacked on top of each other?
I mean,
little double Ewoks.
If I were going to go that route, I would just go for Chewbacca. Like, why do I need two stacked on top of each other when I can have Chewbacca?
So you like movies? Do you like good times? Check us out. We're So I Married a Movie Geek at Movie Geekcast on Twitter. We're on Facebook, iTunes, Podbean, Google Play, Stitcher, all those other things. We'll see you at the movies.
Hi, my name's Jeremy. I've listened to podcasts for years. I've always had questions about my favorite shows or for my favorite hosts. I started a Facebook group called Podcasts We Listen To. It's a place where listeners can talk about their favorite shows and find new favorites. It's a place where podcasters can get tips on improving their shows, share their shows, and find new audiences. It's a place for all things and all genres of podcasts. That group has taught me that we all have questions about our favorite hosts. And now that group has become a show called Podcasts We Listen To. You can join me every Wednesday as I sit down with your favorite podcast hosts. You can get in questions for hosts by emailing them to podswelistento@gmail.com, or you can tweet me at podcastswlt. And of course, you can join the Facebook group as well. I'd love for you to subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you get your favorite shows. See you next Wednesday.
Thanks for sitting through the break with me, and be sure to check out some of those shows that I featured in our Podern Family break. Now, if you're a zoo fan, there are 2 other terrific small zoos near Philadelphia. If you're a local and you've never been, there's something fucking wrong with you. My kid is 16 and we still have a membership to Elmwood Park Zoo.
Meet the newest members of the Elmwood Park Zoo in Norristown. 2 baby porcupines. One proud mom gave birth Wednesday, another mom delivered on Sunday. The zoo's only male porcupine is dad to both of them.
The Elmwood Park Zoo is almost 100 years old. It opened in 1924, and to this day, the zoo focuses on animals from North and South America. When you don't have time to make it into the city, this is a fantastic place to take the kids. The membership is super affordable, and they have so many terrific events all year long, including Star Wars Day, which, makes me really happy. The other zoo I love, and it isn't that small, is the Cape May Zoo in Cape May County, New Jersey. This zoo is free. Yep, it's free. Although there are donation canisters when you enter the zoo and throughout the entire zoo compound, so don't be a cheap ass. Make a donation. This zoo is so much larger than you expect. Make sure you're wearing comfortable shoes. It's in a beach town. Your natural inclination is to wear your cute stacked sandals, and that's not going to cut it. Leave the wedges in the car, throw on a pair of sneakers. This zoo has what looks like a safari on the African plains. It is massive and completely unexpected. A few years ago, they bred white tigers and you could see the babies and it was amazing. So if you're down in Jersey, if you're down at the beaches, down at the shore this summer, take some time, hit Route 9, go to the Cape May Zoo. If you follow me on Facebook, you know I'm psyched about the flea market coming up at Eastern State Penitentiary on May 6th. What better place could there possibly be to shop than outside a haunted, abandoned prison? I am hoping some local listeners will come out and join me. We can shop, we can hunt for ghosts, and then we can head to South Philly for brunch at Sabrina's. If flea markets are your thing, the Clover Market is back, and I'm so happy. There's amazing arts and crafts people, antiques, jewelry, food, fresh squeezed lemonade, so much fun and so much shopping. The market kicked off last weekend in Chestnut Hill, and there are 3 locations coming up in suburban Philly in Bryn Mawr later this month on April 23rd, May 21st, and then June 11th. Philly is definitely a foodie town. It's also a brewery town. And I don't think brewery, the way I'm using it, is a word, because I'm not using brewery, like where you brew beers. I'm using brewy, like foodie. So I don't know what word you use for people who love beer. It's kind of a stupid word, but I'm sticking with it. We have so many pop-up beer gardens around the city all year long, and especially this time of year. And what I'm really excited to check out is something new. It's a sky-high beer garden at Circa Green, which is on South 30th Street. It's the city's first elevated park. The beer garden opens on Friday, April 21st, and it runs every Friday night through June 23rd. 2 months worth of Friday nights enjoying brews under the stars, actually much closer to the stars than anywhere else in the city. I'm not a huge beer fan, but I love the idea of being outside on an elevated park, yes, with grass under my toes, high above the city. So I'm planning on checking out Circa Green. One of the best foodie experiences is the night market, which always reminds me of the night bus from Harry Potter, but it's nothing like Harry Potter, so I don't know why I make that analogy. So what's the night market? Well, it's a pop-up food truck festival. Some of the best food trucks in the city converge on one spot for special nights throughout spring and summer. The first night market is in Northeast Philly on May 11th, and then the next one moves to the Spruce Hill part of the city on June 29th, and then Roxborough about a week after my birthday on August 10th, and then the night market closes in October on the 5th in the Italian market in South Philly. Get your ass to one of those night markets because they are fantastic. It's such a fun night to be out, to be outside, to be enjoying food that you might not normally try, and it's just a great time. One of the coolest spots in Philly when the weather is fair is Spruce Street Harbor Park at Penn's Landing. And what's so great about this park is it's open almost all year long, but the activities and attractions change with the seasons. In spring and summer, there are hammocks that are big enough for 2 or even more than 2 people. There are swan pedal boats. They've got a giant Jenga and a giant Connect 4, plus gardens and food and drinks and fun, and it's awesome. And it's all along the Delaware River, so it's so beautiful, especially at night because the whole park is covered with lights. You can play ping pong. There's a beer garden. Of course, there's a beer garden. It would seem lately that no Philly outdoor spot is complete without a beer garden. And the Blue Cross River Rink is back, but instead of the ice rink during the winter, we have a skating rink during the spring and summer. And thank God they've got skates with 4 wheels like we used in the 80s. I cannot blade. Those inline wheels land me on my ass. Well, regular skates land me on my ass too, but not as quickly or quite as often as the inline skates. The Chinese Lantern Festival is returning again this year to Franklin Square. It's unbelievable. Some of the paper lanterns are massive, the size of sculptures, and the lighting is exquisite. There's a 200-foot dragon, and it's less than $20 to get in. It's even cheaper for the kids. The Lantern Festival's only open for about a month, from May 9th to June 11th, and it's simply remarkable. These are just a few of the events I'll be hitting over the next few months. There's so much more to do in this city, even if you're just walking the streets. Okay, that sounded really bad. I mean, if you're just out and about walking in Philly, looking at the architecture, just enjoying the city. I plan on doing quite a lot of that this spring, and if you see me out and about wearing my Twisted Philly tee, don't be shy. Come on up, introduce yourself. I promise I won't throat punch you. I'll post links to these activities and more on my social media pages, and if you do check out any of these spots, make sure you take a picture and share it with me on Facebook or Twitter. If you're not local, nor are you planning on visiting the city anytime soon, you really should. Philly shines all year long, and as twisted as it gets up in this John, which you guys know from listening to Twisted Philly, there's so many other wonderful things about this city that are family-friendly, date-friendly, and kid-friendly. So get your ass on a plane, a train, or an automobile and stop by the city of brotherly love. That's it from me. Ciao for now, Twisters.